Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. I hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. It's a very interesting news to discuss today regarding rosters before Stage 2 does kick off. The groups were drawn yesterday for the Stage 2 pools. We'll talk about that in a few minutes time, but also some major roster mania changes potentially, and if not changes yet, substitutes coming into teams to kind of kick life into squads that have been underperforming, with changes potentially on the horizon. Intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Like if you guys enjoyed the video, subscribe if you are new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. It really helps out the channel. Thank you very much indeed for doing that. Let's hop into things then. So as Zach says yesterday, that being Zed of course, hashtag 6th Raven, Stage 2 is set. The groups will look at these pools in just a couple of seconds time, but implying right that Zed is going to be staying in the starting lineup for the Ravens with the difficulties they had with Alex having to go back to the UK due to some family issues. They of course had to bring Zed in last minute alongside aBeZy, Dylan and Shawnee of course for the major, which obviously didn't go to plan for them, but it does seem like they're going to be making some changes. This came out yesterday from CODZone then. We've received word that aBeZy has been benched from the Ravens and aBeZy has been moved into the starting lineup for Stage 2. Talk about that in a second. The other thing then big, also Venom of course on the Wester team, who's looked so good in the as like an amateur up and coming SMG player so far this season, signed to LA Thieves. Not sure if he'll be starting. Word is he will replace Temp. As Kenny says, that's straight up false. So denying the rumour that Temp is going to be benched, but honestly it seems to me, and as Crone says in a second over at CDL Intel, that look, Temp might not be on the bench as of yet, he might not be on the chopping block quite as of yet, but if there's someone who's going to go, it's probably going to be him. And interesting the fact that they've also got Drazah on their substitute bench, that they're now bringing Venom onto the sub bench as well, it seems, to potentially replace Temp or whoever happens to be underperforming at a particular time. So Kenny's like, false, okay, Temp hasn't been benched as of yet, which is probably what is actually going on, but it definitely seems to me that Venom will be coming in as a substitute player, and that certainly says to me that the starting team is certainly on thin ice. And I believe after the Stage 1 major, I mean, we saw, I think Kenny maybe he's even moved into like an SMG role a little bit now, with Temp taking on that flex, which is kind of interesting, especially given how good Kenny was with the PPSH in World War II. You could argue the AK-74U is somewhat similar to that, so I'm sure it'll be nasty regardless, and maybe that'll work out for these guys. But in theory, you then could bring Venom into the team as a second SMG to TJ, then Kenny goes back to the flex, slashes the main AR. That might make the most sense, but as for now, it seems like Temp is still going to be on the lineup, but that is at least what we're hearing. The other part of it is, of course, the Royal Ravens situation. So this is what Crone has to say on the matter. Can confirm the rumours of aBeZy joining the Ravens. I've also heard Venom to 100 Thieves, but unsure if anyone is getting benched from the Thieves as of yet. So the aBeZy move is pretty interesting, right? Because before the season even began at the Kickoff Classic, I believe London wanted aBeZy on the team to join their squad just for a couple of weeks to then replace Zero because he couldn't compete, or he had to compete from Europe for the Kickoff Classic, which obviously wasn't ideal for him. So yeah, aBeZy apparently joining in place of aBeZy. Now, of course, we'll talk about this in more detail if it does indeed get confirmed, but it is very interesting to me the fact that this is the change you decide to make. aBeZy, it's not like he was performing spectacularly, but it didn't really seem to me that he was the problem on that team. So aBeZy gone, aBeZy in, Shawnee still as the main AR, and then of course you've got Zed and Dylan as your SMGs right now. I'm still not sure that really solves their issues by any means. So I think it's somewhat unfortunate to see this, that aBeZy's out of the team already. Maybe he'll get his opportunity to start going forwards once again, but yeah, aBeZy's coming in after that Wester team is kind of split up, and of course Venom from that team going on to Los Angeles Thieves as of right now. The LA Thieves move is honestly pretty interesting, right? Because they've already got Drazah as a sub, so they've decided to get Venom in as well, if this is indeed the case. Not yet confirmed, of course. So, okay, maybe just to take that opportunity away from other teams, right? Like, as a business move, it makes a lot of sense to me to get Venom in, because now you've got two very hungry, up-and-coming SMG talents on your bench, like, waiting to get into the starting lineup at any possible opportunity. And also, if you're another team looking for an up-and-coming, very talented SMG player, like, you could argue a team like Seattle, then Venom is no longer on the market, because LA Thieves have just scooped them up. And that's really an interesting question, right? We saw Ultra make some changes, Method is out, Insight is in, we've seen Ravens make some changes, we've seen clearly LA Thieves are considering changes despite Kenny denying the fact that Temp has been dropped already, and then you're looking at a team like Seattle, right, how also had a very poor Stage 1 by the standards that at least they would hope they will get to this season. People were talking about top 6 before the season began. We'll look at the groups in a second here. It doesn't seem like that's necessarily going to be the case this time around either, and yet you've got like a guy like Venom, for example, a very talented up-and-coming SMG player that was there on the market ready to go, and now he's been snapped up by a team that isn't Seattle Surge, a lineup that certainly could have used them. Just wanted to mention this real quick actually from LA Thieves, because Temp has actually been a key part to their content lately. I think he's been a great piece and an addition to their content. This Guess Who thing especially was pretty spectacular. The vibes seem to be pretty high, which means do they really want to get rid of him as of yet? Maybe not, given there's some reasons not necessarily inside the game. And as Crone says back here, I just wanted to mention that Surge's substitute technically is Nubsy, right? They don't actually have a sub, and yeah, let alone a guy like Venom who now LA Thieves have snapped up, right? So certainly some interesting questions about this to go forwards with as well. As Crone also says right here, London have fielded all of these players so far this season, it does seem, which is pretty crazy to see. It seems like they're hemorrhaging cash, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, not ideal, but we'll have to see how this team goes going forwards. Obviously, they've had a pretty difficult time with some of the issues this team has faced, and Parasa says right here, never lucky. So I imagine maybe some confirmations over the coming days. These then are the groups that were confirmed yesterday. So the teams went through. FaZe were number 1, of course, at stage 1. Dallas were number 2. Therefore, they become the top seeds in Group A and Group B, respectively, and they then get to, well, basically a snake draft, whoever picks the team that goes into the other team's group. And some of these decisions actually were quite interesting for a number of these squads. So this is how the groups line up. We've got FaZe in Group A. They decided to pick OpTic to go into Group B. Totally makes sense. And immediately we've got Dallas versus OpTic once again in Group B. I mean, this matchup at the Major was insane. A Game 5 round 11. Very tough to split these two teams right now. We'll talk about their scrims a little bit, results from last night in the video later today. But yeah, they're going to be in Group B. And then Empire decided to choose Thieves to go into Group A, which is pretty interesting, right? Saying that they believe that Thieves are maybe the 4th strongest team in the game right now, despite subliners when they're on looking much hotter than Thieves in theory. But maybe they do believe that Thieves are pretty nasty as well. And OpTic got the next pick, actually. So I think it went Dallas picked Thieves, and then OpTic picked New York. So Dallas maybe were pretty confident that New York were going to get put in there anyway, and not having to worry about them coming into their own group. But I mean, let's say it was actually the Dallas picked Thieves, and then Thieves got to pick next rather than OpTic picking next, even though that wouldn't actually make sense because OpTic were 3rd in. Then all of a sudden New York could have been in Group B, and this group could have been absolutely deadly. But I still believe this group is pretty deadly. We'll talk about this in a second. Feel kind of bad for Seattle, to be honest. Honestly, both these groups are pretty damn nice. They're pretty hard to predict, to be honest, all things considered. So then it went through the snake, and I mean, okay, so New York going to here, and then Thieves chose Mutineers to go into Group B, and then it kind of goes back and forth, and these are the groups we ended up with right here. So Group B on paper, I think is harder to call. I think it's probably the group of death. It seems like a bit of a death pit to me, right? Because not only have you got the Mutineers, a squad that's been obviously clearly so talented, but they haven't really put it together. If they can find their form, especially in Search and Destroy, if they can actually win 4 versus 3 situations when Awakening gets first bloods, all of a sudden this team is very much, I believe, a top 4 contender once again, as we kind of expected them to be. Awakening is absolutely insane. Neptune probably will continue to improve over time, and they still have options with their squad going forward, especially if Sky steps up to a level that we typically expect of him. Maybe he will do that now with the Krieg in hand a little bit more, with them, yeah, maybe Awakening using the QBZ. That actually might make more sense for them as a squad. So Mutineers always an underdog team that could potentially upset one of your big names. They've done it in the past. I'm sure they'll continue to do it again. Then we move down in this group. We've got the Paris Legion, the squad that so far this season has probably put up the closest fight against Atlanta FaZe. They went Game 5 in that series against them. It took a 1v3 from Simp and a 1v2 from Cellium to actually beat Legion in that series. And yes, that was not necessarily a must-win for FaZe. They'd already locked up number 1 seed in their group at the time. But Paris, I think, are very easily overlooked right here and definitely have the potential to upset one of the big name teams. And then you go further down in the group and you find the Minnesota Rokkr, a squad that beat Dallas in stage 1. Of course, they can barely win a hardpoint. I think they're 2-7 or something in hardpoints. But their Search and Destroy is solid, and they're honestly pretty damn good, and their control is pretty solid as well. So if they can just step up in their hardpoints and actually win some crucial series and clutch up, you'd never want to counter a team like the Minnesota Rokkr. If you lose map 1 to Minnesota, you're in a pretty bad spot. And then you've got Seattle in this group as well, which maybe can turn things around, but honestly, it's a pretty tough spot for Seattle being put into an absolute corner like this, in my opinion. That's the reason why I think Group B is harder to call, because I just think that calling any of the placings in this group is pretty difficult, right? If there's no clear-cut number 1, I think, here between Empire and Chicago, and then who actually gets out top 3 in this group into the winners bracket is also very tough to call. I'm guessing Empire and Chicago make it, but then out of these 4, I mean, really, maybe it's out of these 3, who actually gets through, I think it's really tough to call. I mean, you can argue probably a case for all of these 3 teams depending. I mean, you can also argue that, okay, Crossroads out of the map set, Apocalypse into the map set, now means that a team like Minnesota that maybe isn't so good on those close range maps can actually do a better job maybe on Apocalypse, you could argue. Let's look at Group A as well then. So FaZe, I think, are clear-cut number 1 here, but then honestly, the middle of the pack, I mean, Ravens are expecting to be bottom of the pack, but calling who gets top 2, I suppose, out of these 4 teams, given FaZe we imagine is going to be number 1, is a pretty difficult thing to do, right? I mean, Thieves, Subliners, Ultra with this new roster change could be improved, to be honest. I mean, maybe their chemistry works a little bit better. Guerrillas have been very scary, to be honest. Not a team you want to be facing right now. Can definitely take 2 Search and Destroys off anyone, and certainly capable of running a respawn because they're very fundamentally solid. So Guerrillas is not a team you want to be facing. Then you've got the Subliners who have the potential to get hot at any moment, and then Thieves as well. So I think I'm just going to go safe probably and just pick the top 3 to get out of this pool, which is maybe something I wouldn't necessarily do in Group B, but still maybe I would. But definitely a lot of upset potential right here. So I think there's definitely some interesting storylines in both. Intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comment section on which pool you think is more deadly. And this I thought was pretty funny for the Dallas Empire. Our matchups for stage 2, they played the Minnesota Rokkr, and well, don't forget last time, as Octane's Burner points out right here, that they played Minnesota Rokkr, FaZe v OpTic on Valentine's Day, they really gave us the Rokkr in a series, of course, that Dallas Empire went on to lose, so will that happen again? I doubt they're going to do a tweet like that this time round for the bad GG, but who knows exactly what direction they will decide to go down. And as well, EasyMax says right here, Pool B seems to be the pool of death right now, but a pretty tough one to call, but I think A honestly has a lot of stacked potential in that group as well. Just to finish off the video then, these are the schedules for the matches that are coming up over the coming weeks. So, next Thursday, everything kicks off again for Stage 2. This hopefully will be a traditional stage where we actually get the 3 home series kind of in a row, which effectively is just group play, and then after the 3 weeks, then we go into the major as intended. Last time around, we had to cancel the week 2, of course, because of the whole power outages in Texas, and therefore we had the Super Week, and there was 7 days of COD in a row for Super Week, 2 days off, and then 5 days of a major. 12 out of 14 days had COD in. That was a tough one, I think, for fans. I think by the end of it, we were getting pretty tired, honestly, of all the Call of Duty that was being played. So this time around, hopefully it's a little bit more manageable. We've got, of course, this is the week number 1, technically the Toronto Ultra home series, where Toronto are playing twice, but yeah, basically just group play matches once again. Some spicy matchups right here. I mean, LA Thieves Subliner should be a good one to point out in particular on the Sunday. This is the week 2. I'll just kind of leave these on screen for a few seconds if you guys would like to pause, find out where your favourite team is playing, all that good stuff. Interestingly, on the Saturday, FaZe versus Thieves is actually the second match of the day. Ultra versus Gorillas is last. Then OpTic Mutineers over here. I mean, we get the Empire Rokkr rematch, so definitely some good matchups to keep your eyes on right here. Honestly, the league is so competitive right now. A lot of these are going to be great matchups, I'm sure. And then the final week of it, technically the Los Angeles Gorillas home series, the final match of the weekend on Sunday, April the 4th, is going to be Empire versus OpTic. Hopefully this will be a battle, I suppose, for number 1 in that pool. That'd be great to see, but maybe many upsets will have happened before then. Enjoyed to hear your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, I'd greatly appreciate a like on the video. It really helps out the YouTube algorithm to know you enjoyed this content. Other people like you may enjoy this content as well, and help grow the competitive Call of Duty community. Thank you for watching as always, take care, and I will see you next time.